first round of our research roundtable. The agenda for today's presentation is the first one would be my PhD dissertation presentation, followed by a book review which is shared by Paricharcha and Neha, and then the open forum, which is last 15 minutes will be an open forum for everyone to discuss the upcoming or the latest research in their respective areas, which can be interdisciplinary. So we'll start with yes, we may. So this is the topic that I worked on, exploring the relationship between identity and consumption, a study of migrant students. So basically the area of the study was on the migrant students and their identity and consumption. To make it very simple for everyone to understand, it was about those students who are coming from places from the tier 2, tier 3 cities to tier 1 city for their study. How does their consumption behavior basically change upon arrival in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Pune? So all these educational hubs that are there. So when they migrate to those places, this has been observed that their entire identity and consumption changes over a period of time. So this study was more related to how does their identity and consumption evolves over a period of time. So this is the presentation outline. Now this is the one that I presented for my PhD thesis presentation. Now research motivation, review of literature. So I will be briefly skipping a few modules from this because it will be not so much relevant to you. I will be just focusing more on the purpose of the study, the key research findings that are there, and the conclusion that we drew from that particular study. Okay. So now research motivation. So this was very important for me to understand that why did I choose that topic. The primary reason why I chose this particular topic was because I was a migrant student. I came from Bihar to study in Delhi during my graduation, and so there was a sea changes that I encountered when I was here. So when I later on migrated from here to some other part like Bangalore and other places for my studies, then I consistently found that this is not just me who is facing this issue that was there. There were many of my friends who were in the same boat, but we could not understand the reason why this was basically happening. So this was the perspective that I chose, and this was the personal motivation behind taking up the study. Then I started observing while teaching. I started observing students here. If you all can relate to this topic because all of you would encounter such set of students in the classroom. So when you talk about those set of students who are there, you find that there is a certain way of coping that stress level or coping that gap that they feel when they arrive here. So how do they navigate that particular change? And from a demographic perspective, I found India to be a good area of study because if you look at this particular 2018 demographic dividend, this 2018 to 2055 is the year till when we have age where we are very ripe on demographic dividend. So this is a good age time to tap this particular research. Now, what was the phenomena that I basically studied was how does educational migration. So when you hear about migration, there are a lot of things that comes to mind. Basically, labor migration is the first thing that comes to mind. But we are not talking about labor migration, we are talking about educational migration per se. And the connection between identity and the consumption in terms of educational migration. Now these are some of the key literature that is there. So I'll skip this, just making a common statement for all these studies that were important for my research was that migration leads to seminal consumption. This is given in the literature. It also leads to some kind of a bridge between the old identity and the new identity. Now how does the student cross that bridge between the old identity and the new identity? that we need to figure out, that if a student is crossing the bridge from their older identity to a newer identity, how do they do that? Okay, so these are all the literature. So here, if you look at this part, Russell Bell, he gave a very important statement way back in 1988. His research said that it is a dual game. Our identities, we impose our identities on possession, and the possessions that we hold, it's a reciprocal relation that we share between identity and the possession that we have. So this gave further motivation for me to understand the interlinkage between how this basically works. Okay. So the research gap was to understand how does the brands basically play a role in bridging that particular gap. Now, research question. This was particularly important, that how does academic migration change the consumption and identity when the students are exposed to novel lifestyles, they have a complete new exposure, and they have newfound aspirations in the new place that they are coming into. Now, the last thing, does this consumption impact their identity when they are consuming new set of brands like Puma, Van Heusen, Louis Philippe kind of brand that is there, Benetton? How does it impact their identity? So, now this is the research process that was there. So, this is the usual research. Now, this is something that I will just briefly talk about. In terms of methodology, I chose a Straussian grounded theory, which was mainly a qualitative research area, and I will not get into why I chose this because it's a long story, but based on the kind of epistemology that I use, the ontology that I chose this to be a fit for my particular study. Then sample size was 90, and it was based on theoretical sampling and not on statistical sampling. So, this is its respondents profile. So this is how the data was collected from various locations, and it was partly face-to-face and partly telephonic because of the COVID during that time. Okay. Now this is how the coding was done. So there were 3 levels of coding that was there. One was the open coding, where you have 90 open codes from all the 19 interviews that I took. So we arrived at 90 codes that were there. From there, all those 90 codes were reduced into 4 major subcategories that were there. And from there, we arrived at one core category, that was identity loss and compensatory consumption. This is how the coding sheets looks like. So you have here the first level of coding. So like these, you have 90 codes that were there, which was reduced to the concepts. From there you have subcategories that you came to, and from there you have categories, and finally you arrive at the code that was there. So this is the methodology that was followed. So it was basically a funneling process that is used during this research. Now, major research findings. So if I have to talk about the major research finding, there were 3 major key research findings, which was like quite well taken by the externals who evaluated the thesis. One was the evolvement of the brand attachment hierarchy that came, then substantive theory of identity loss and compensatory consumption, and brand usage and transition matrix. Now I'll just briefly touch upon that, the research finding. This was very interesting finding that came. Now, when you talk about the students who migrate from one place to another, this is how the hierarchy of their brand attachment develops. Now, at the base is the brand awareness or brand association. Now, this is the level 1 where the students are, at times they have no exposure to the brand and they are slowly introduced to the brand. So this is where some of them said that for the first time I tried Taco Bell. They came here and for the first time they tried some cuisine or some kind of brand that they had never experienced before. So this was brand awareness and a kind of association that they developed. Second level, when they moved from awareness, they moved to affinity. So this was where I just quote the verbatim here, where they say that I have developed fondness for cafes now, and I like going to cafe more frequently now. So now you can see that how from awareness they are going to the affinity level. Third is attachment. Now this is a very key level where the student in just a span of say a year's time, they say, this is the statement that they have said, which is very profound, and previously I did not care about brands, but now I feel lost without it. So this is a kind of integration within themselves that they had when they migrated from a smaller town to a bigger town just within a span of 1 year that we are looking at. And the last one was brand aspiration. So brand aspiration was something that ran across all the segments of student who was there. Even the one who were at an affinity level and attachment level also showed some kind of brand aspiration. So they said that even people who were replete with brands, they also aspired for something which was like of a very high level. That's why we named it as brand aspiration. So this was one of the major research findings from the study that we put it here like this. Now this is the theoretical model that we developed, that how this exposure to new cultural environment leads to various kind of identity threats in these students. When they come to a new place, there is an exposure that is there. So there is many kind of identity threats that they feel, and to compensate that identity threat that is there, they either assume a new identity, they will have a different kind of a hairstyle altogether, or they will wear torn jeans or something like that. So assume a different kind of new identity which was not there previously, or they maintain status quo. Status quo was maintained for those students who were financially very fragile, who could not afford such kind of changes that were there. So they remained how they were. Or there could be another reason where there was a kind of a strong value system that was attached to them, so they could not transition from one place to another. So this is basically leading to compensatory consumption and evolvement of brand attachment hierarchy. So in resolving this threat that was there, the earlier slide that was there, a hierarchy evolved. Now this is the third research finding that we came across. Now this is again interesting based on the previous kind of brand usage that they had. The current level of brand usage that they had and the previous brand usage that they had, based on that we came across this, we devised this kind of hierarchy. So a student who had very low brand usage previously, who were using very less brands, and the students who currently now uses very less number of brands as of now, for them making transition was very difficult. So transitioning from one zone to another was very difficult. Similarly, when we talk about this set of students where the current usage was very high, they came to a new place and they started using lots of brands that were there, and previously their brand usage was very low. So for them the transitioning was smooth and it was easier for them. This particular matrix was something which was interesting. Earlier they were using many brands, but when they came to the new setup, their brand usage became low. Why? Because they wanted to set it into that particular ecosystem which was not accepting Armani exchange kind of brand that was there. So they shelved those brands. So we named it as brand shelving that they are doing. And then you have previously also they were using good number of brands, and the current usage was also good number of brands. So they maintained the status quo that was there. So this was the last research finding that was there, and based on that, the theoretical contributions that we arrived at was the brand attachment hierarchy that developed and the theory of identity loss and compensatory consumption. So this leads for a lot of scope for future research in terms of understanding that at different levels, like for example, if the same kind of research is replicated in say Bangalore, I did it with Delhi University sample. So if this is being done with Bangalore or Pune or Mumbai, I think I don't know whether we can generalize this or we cannot generalize this. So if you cannot generalize at this particular point of time, the result cannot be generalized. Later on, with more research adding into it, we can maybe come with a kind of not extant theory, but we can come with a relatively stable theory on this particular thing. So this was the research that was there.
Can we put some query just to have the information and knowledge on this topic, because I think so for the first time I'm going through a proper research on this topic. Because till now, of course, we do have perception, we have witnessed it, experienced it many a times. Still, it is there in the ecosystem. But the thing is, having this kind of concrete research is actually causing a lot of queries. I think so. It's not a query; it is more of like
Inquisitiveness,
quest for the information. So, the first question is, what was the demographic of these students? Because if I know, I am also a kind of migrant person. If not at the student level, of course at the workers level, employment level. So what I feel like, people at the student level, they are migrating for different reasons. There are different kind of categories of studies. Like there are people who are coming here for UPSC preparation, people who are coming here for pursuing their undergraduate courses or postgraduate courses, and there are people who are coming here to migrate further abroad. So do you feel like the same model can be fitting, or this is very specific to one category of students?
No, this is not specific to one category of students. A similar suggestion came during the dissertation, where the external told that this kind of study can be replicated with what you said, people who are migrating for different reasons, like and a different age group. I took a segment of 18 to 22 years age that was there. Now to study it in a much broader perspective, the age group can be studied from say 25 to 32 or 35 years, where they have started working and they have started earning on their own. So how would their perception about usage of brands and their identity and consumption would change? So this is
a different thing. What I am asking, like within the same age group, when a person is coming for UPSC preparation, what I experience, I don't have any concrete research in this, but then their priorities in terms of brand uses
would not be so high.
It is not as such what I could see here. This is a personal experience. I don't have that research kind of thing. So what I feel, if I talk about brand consumption, it is not the same to all these three categories of students. So might be this is available to one gentry which is much more included in the societal, they are much more involved with the society. But there are people who are very focused and they have just one agenda. So in that case, and this is a big gentry that I'm talking about, so they are coming here with one agenda point, and for them perhaps we need to check. I'm not saying yes or no, but we need to check, because if I understand the kind of profile that you're using, they belong to one gentry.
Yes.
So this is the thing that I wanted to ask. Do they belong to one category or one kind of gentry if I talk about these three gentries of students?
Precisely yes, but there were certain, I would say there were certain, we found that there were negative cases also, where we found that that on basis of which we found this matrix that came, that they maintained the status quo in terms of the brand usage, because they were earlier not into so much usage of brand, and also after coming they were like not so much into consuming new brands that were